हरे कृष्ण। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। So last few days we have been discussing the importance of studying scriptures. We have seen the importance of studying Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the glory of scriptures. And we also have seen the relevance of scriptures in our day-to-day life also to some degree. Today also we will see a little bit. And yesterday we have seen specifically the various methods of studying Bhagavatam. And earlier sessions also we have seen the mood in which we have to study Srimad Bhagavatam. So one is the method, second is the mood. So the mood has to be, the consciousness of studying Srimad Bhagavatam should be very pure and selfless and not with any material desires. And the method should be very systematic and organized, not in a random way. So we need to study Bhagavatam systematically from first canto to last canto. Just like we take darshan of the Supreme Lord, his deity form, from the lotus feet to the lotus face. Similarly, we have to study Bhagavatam also in a systematic manner from first canto to last canto. So in the Padma Purana, there is a beautiful shloka that says, Pado yadiyo prathamadvitiyo tritiya turyo kathito yaduru navistata panchamayava shashto bhyantaram dhorigulam tathanyau kanthastharajan navamo yadiyo mukharavindam dashamah prafullam ekadasho yasya lalatapatam shiropitu dvadasha eva bhati. So first canto and second canto of Bhagavatam are compared to the lotus feet of the Lord. Pado yadiyo prathamadvitiyo tritiya turyo khatito yaduru. Third and fourth cantos of Bhagavatam are compared to the thighs of the Lord, and the fifth canto is compared to the navel of the Lord, sixth canto chest of the Lord, then seventh and eighth cantos are the arms of the Lord, ninth canto throat, 10th canto face, 11th canto forehead, and 12th canto head. So like that, from the description of this Padma Purana shloka, we see that Bhagavatam is non-different from the Supreme Lord's, Lord Krishna's transcendental body. Just like we offer Aarti to Krishna from the lotus feet to lotus face, similarly we have to study Srimad Bhagavatam also from the first canto to last canto systematically. So that's like one way, one thing we need to keep in mind while studying Bhagavatam. Secondly, a nice place and a good time where we are not sleepy, we have more focus and concentration, we don't have anything pressing, waiting for us. So all these things also will matter. And early morning is very good. And if it is not practical, you can always find your own time when to study Bhagavatam. And we should also see that amongst all the Puranas, Bhagavatam is considered the essence. Now, the first basics of scriptural study, basics of our Vaishnava philosophy are given in Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita forms the basics of scriptural study, while Bhagavatam comes in the next. After you familiarize yourself with the basics of Bhagavad Gita, then you come to Srimad Bhagavatam. The essence of Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate message that Krishna wants to give in Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. So give up all your concocted religions and embrace this highest religion of surrendering unto me. So Krishna emphasized Bhakti Yoga and how one has to perform Bhakti Yoga. Also Krishna said that Manmana bhav mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Then Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, always chant me, chant about me, and Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, you should offer Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam to me. Like that, Krishna has described Bhakti Yoga as the topmost spiritual path. So once you familiarize yourself with the basics of our philosophy, what is the topmost spiritual path? That is Bhakti Yoga. Then we come to Srimad Bhagavatam, where we hear the elaborate descriptions of so many devotees who have perfected their lives by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Now there are 18 Puranas. Vyasadeva has written 18 Puranas. I think in one of the question and answer sessions in our previous, in the last 4 days, I was mentioning that there are 18 Puranas Vyasadeva has written, and first are Satvika Puranas, next 6 are in mode of passion, next 6 are in mode of ignorance, and initially Bhagavatam was like in mode of goodness Purana, but Narada Muni instructed Vyasadeva to revise that Srimad Bhagavatam in such a way that Bhakti Yoga is highlighted and the glories of the Supreme Lord, his devotees and his incarnations are elaborately described. Now this Bhagavatam is considered to be the essence of all Puranas. Now you see in the third shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that Bhagavatam is the essence of all scriptures. Nigama kalpatarorgalitam phalam sukamukhaadamritadrava samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam. When all the Vedic literatures are compared to a desire fulfilling tree, Srimad Bhagavatam is compared to the ripened fruit of the desire fulfilling tree. Nigama kalpataror, kalpataru is desire tree. Nigama kalpataru means, nigama means scriptures. Nigama kalpataru means desire tree of scriptures. Galitam phalam means ripened fruit. So Bhagavatam is considered to be the ripened fruit of all the Vedic scriptures. And Sukamukhad Amritadrava Samyutam. Now, when a mango or a fruit is eaten by a parrot, the flavor of that fruit increases. Similarly, when this Bhagavatam, which is already sweet with the nectarian narrations of Krishna's pastimes, becomes all the more sweet when Sukadeva Goswami describes it. Now, you see, Sukadeva Goswami has love for the Lord, and when somebody describes the glories of the Lord with love, then the flavor, the sweetness of those pastimes will increase. For instance, in Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, there is a description that all the gopis of Vrindavan went to Mother Yashoda. For what? To complain against Krishna. So they would go to Mother Yashoda and they would say that, oh, your son has come to our house and your son has stolen our butter. Your son has stolen our butter. He has broken our pots and he has done a lot of mischief. He would pass a stool and urine in our houses. And even if we hide our pots also, your son can break our pots with stones, and your son will somehow, even if we hang our butter pots on the ceiling, your son can somehow reach them by making a pyramid of gopas. He will bring some wooden planks and stools and then somehow reach the ceiling and then take our butter and yogurt. And even if he is not very hungry, he doesn't need to eat all these contents of the pots to monkeys. And if monkeys' bellies are also full and they also cannot eat anything, then he will throw this butter on our faces, and then he would say that your butter is so third class that even monkeys don't eat them. So like that, Krishna will do so much mischief. Yashoda would say that why don't you give him some food? He must be hungry. Then the gopis would say that no, he's never hungry because you are always lovingly feeding Krishna. Where is the question that he's hungry? He has taste for stealing. He just wants to bother us. So that's the only reason why he would come to our houses. Otherwise, he's not hungry. So like that, there are so many complaints. Basically, the gopis are not bothered that Krishna is coming and stealing butter from their houses. The gopis are just they have so much of love, do not want to forget Krishna's pastimes at any time. They always want to remember Krishna's pastimes. So whenever Krishna would come to these gopis' houses and say steals butter, one gopi would go to another gopi and then speak those activities of Krishna. Like that, in Vrindavan, constant glorification of Krishna is happening. Constant discussion about Krishna's activities is happening with so much of love and affection. And then stealing butter and other things, Krishna will not steal in Yashoda Mata's house because it is his own house. He would not steal in his own house. So means Yashoda Mata is deprived of this pleasure of seeing Krishna stealing pastimes. So how poor Yashoda, she doesn't have this pleasure. So let us go and give this pleasure to Mother Yashoda by describing all the stealing pastimes to Yashoda. So just to give the similar amount of pleasure to Mother Yashoda, all these gopis would go and then narrate these pastimes. So it's not out of their frustration or anger on Krishna. It is out of their love and affection and attraction towards Krishna's pastimes that they are speaking like this. And they wanted to give that same pleasure to Mother Yashoda also. Now the Vaishnava Acharyas say that Mother Yashoda's pleasure in hearing Krishna stealing pastimes is more than the gopis' pleasure of directly witnessing those pastimes. Because gopis only have seen that pastimes, but Mother Yashoda has heard the pastimes. When gopis saw the pastimes, and when they narrated those pastimes are mixed with the love of the gopis. Thus, Mother Yashoda had a better experience of Krishna stealing pastimes than those gopis who directly witnessed them. So, the essence of saying this is when a devotee who loves Krishna describes the Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela of Krishna, our experience of hearing from the devotee is much more sweeter than directly witnessing those pastimes or reading those pastimes. So Sukhamukhat Amritadrava Samyutam. Bhagavatam is already nectarian, and because Sukadeva Goswami spoke that Bhagavatam, it has become all the more nectarian. It has become much sweeter. Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. So you drink this nectar of Bhagavatam. So in the first line of this shloka, what is mentioned? That Bhagavatam is like a ripened fruit of Vedic literatures, of the desire tree of Vedas. Now, do you drink fruit or do you eat fruit? You have to drink, you have to eat fruit. But in the third line, this Sukadeva Goswami says you have to drink this fruit. Because this fruit does not have any objectionable parts of the peel or inside seed. So mango, if you take mango, you will remove the peel and you will remove the seed and the pulp you eat. But this Bhagavatam is that kind of fruit in which there is no seed, there is no peel. It's directly semi-solid juice that you don't have to eat it. You can just drink it. So you are getting pre-digested material from Sukadeva Goswami's loving, affectionate description. So Bhagavatam is considered the essence of all Vedic scriptures. Now, it's considered the crown jewel of all scriptures. And Vyasadeva has written the Srimad Bhagavatam at the maturity of his knowledge. When initially he has written so many scriptures, but when Narada Muni came and enlightened Vyasadeva, after that enlightenment, Vyasadeva has written it. So this is the best book of the author. So when the author directly recommends that this is my best book, so we give more importance to that book than the other books, like that. So that is the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam. And as I described earlier, Bhagavatam will reveal its inner meanings to people who are devotees and not those who are materialistic. We compared Bhagavatam with Mohini Murti, you remember? We compared Bhagavatam with Mohini Murti. Just as Mohini Murti distributed all nectar to the demigods and not the demons, similarly Bhagavatam will reveal all its meanings to to devotees and not people who have some material motivations behind their study. And Bhagavatam is also compared with a lamp. Adhyatma Deepam. So Adhyatma Deepam means Bhagavatam is considered like a lamp that can illuminate our hearts with spiritual knowledge. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares Bhagavatam with 4 things. First thing is lamp. Now in a dark room, if it's totally dark, like now we have power cut here. So if night also there is no power, so we have to lit some lamp. So when you lit a lamp inside the room, that lamp will illuminate only that room. So you put a lamp in one corner of the room and you go to the other corner of the room and try to read a book. Will you be able to read? Definitely not, because the lamp light is not sufficient to illuminate the entire room. Bhagavatam comes lamp because it illuminates the soul, which is needed. Because just like that one lamp illuminates one room or just one corner of the room, to that degree, Bhagavatam is compared to a lamp that can illuminate the soul. Adhyatma Deepam. Deepam. So that's why we have named our magazine also as Bhagavata Pradipika. Means Deepa is lamp that illuminates. Now, second comparison is that Bhagavatam not only illuminates the soul like a lamp, Bhagavatam illuminates the hearts of entire humanity like the sun. So sun is more powerful than lamp, isn't it? Similarly, Bhagavatam is also compared to sun. So Bhagavatam can enlighten entire humanity, entire universe, entire world, shining like sun, glowing like sun, destroying the misconceptions of all the demoniac people. So illuminating one room is at one level. Illuminating the entire world means you need sun. Lamp will not do. So Bhagavatam will act as illuminating lamp on an individual level, and Bhagavatam will also act glowing sun at a global level, right? And that humanity is enlightened. And the third comparison is Bhagavatam is like a nectarian fruit. So Bhagavatam is like lamp, Bhagavatam is like sun, Bhagavatam is also like nectarian fruit. So not only Bhagavatam is philosophically very sound that it destroys the misconceptions of people, but Bhagavatam also presents very sweet descriptions of the Lord. Satisfy the heart. Just now I was reading Krishna's pastimes with Yashoda. There are very sweet descriptions in the 10th canto. So that's why Bhagavatam is also compared to a nectarian fruit. And finally, Bhagavatam is also compared to Mohini Murti that can reveal inner meanings to devotees and not to non-devotees. So that is like one nice comparison given. And out of the 5 potent forms of devotional service, Rupa Goswami says that there are 5 potent forms in devotional service. Number 1, Vaishnava Seva. Number 2, deity service. Number 3, Srimad Bhagavatam. Number 4, Dham Seva, Vrindavan Dham. Number 5 is holy name. Okay. So there are 64 limbs of devotional service. And there are 9 processes of devotional service: Ravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. Now, out of all these 64 limbs and all these 9 processes, you essentially take Rupa Goswami, these 5 forms of devotional service are considered the most perfect and essential forms, most potent forms. So our attachment, we should be attached to one of these 5. So the 5 are Srimad Bhagavatam, Vaishnava Seva, then deity worship, and holy name, and Dham. So 5 things. So of all these 5 things, Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact, has descriptions of the remaining 4 also. Bhagavatam is giving us knowledge about the other things also. Bhagavatam has description of the glories of Holy Dham. Bhagavatam has descriptions of holy name. Bhagavatam has the descriptions of the importance of Vaishnava Seva and Vaishnava Sangha association. So like that, Bhagavatam is an all-encompassing scripture that can enlighten us at multiple levels. From wherever we are, we can always connect to Krishna by taking shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, one sloka is there in the 3rd canto. Tadasya kausharava sarmadatur hareh katham katha susaram uddhrutya pushpebhya ivarta bandho shivaya nah kirtayatirtha kirteh. Tadasya kausharava sarmadatur. Vidura is telling Maitreya in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam that you are Sharmadatu. You are bestower of auspiciousness to everyone. Tadasya kausharava Sharmadatu. Hareha kathameva katha susaram. Hari Katha means the narrations of Krishna is the essence of all topics. Of all topics, the most essential topic is Krishna Katha. Udhrutya pushpebhya iva artabandho Shivaya naha kirtaya tirtha kirtehe. Just like a bumblebee, a honeybee goes to different flowers and collects only the honey. So, for example, a honeybee goes into a garden. Garden has so many things. Garden has pathways. Garden has flowers and plants and gazebos, sitting places, parks, and all these things. So Bhagavatam has a garden has so many details, but bumblebee not attract this detail. It focused only on take honey within the flower. Similarly, there may be hundreds and thousands of topics in this world, but a devotee is not distracted by all those topics. Devotee is focused on Srimad Bhagavatam. Devotees go focused on Krishna Katha. So whoever is speaking this Krishna Katha is considered the most benevolent personality according to the Gopis of Vrindavan also. Gopis of Vrindavan say that Tava Kathamrutam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhavigiranantite Bhurida Janaha. Whoever is glorifying Krishna Katha and spreading Krishna Katha is like the most benevolent personality in this entire universe. So we need to act as instruments of compassion of acharyas who are actually spreading this glories of Krishna Katha. So Bhagavatam is filled with that glories of Krishna. And now Amrish Maharaj Prabhu also requested me to speak something about memorizing shlokas. Now shloka is like a zip file. You understand zip file? Compressed file. For example, you have that zip file or RAR file. When you uncompress it, say 1 MB zip file may be there. Once you unzip it, you may find 10 MB data. Similarly, in this 4-line shloka, there is a lot of data, lot of wisdom that is useful for life. Like that. So there is one beautiful shloka in Bhagavatam. It says, निवृत्ततर्षैर् उपगीयमानः भवौषधात् श्रोत्रमनोभिरामात् क उत्तमश्लोकगुणानुवादात् पुमान् विरज्येत विनापशुघ्नात् निवृत्ततर्षैर् उपगीयमानात्. So in this shloka, I'll not elaborate on the full shloka. I'll focus on one line. Bhavaushadhat Shrotra Manobhiramat. Krishna Katha is considered to be Bhava Aushadha. Bhava means material existence, material miseries. Aushadha means medicine. So Krishna Katha is like medicine for this material miseries. Shrotra Manobhiramat. This is the line that I wanted to elaborate. Shrotra means ears. Mana means heart or mind. Abhiramat. So the shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and our scriptural shlokas, they are very attractive to the mind and the ears, or the heart and the ears. Shrotra is ears, mana is mind. So Bhagavatam shlokas are very attractive to the ears with their meter, with their sound. So Vyasadeva has written so many literatures, and they are in very wonderful Sanskrit poetry, but Vyasadeva has written Srimad Bhagavatam in the best possible poetry. So Vyasadeva at his best. In Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva is at his best. He is the best poet. So the poetry, the choice of words and the sweetness of words of Srimad Bhagavatam are really attractive to the ears. So then secondly, the meaning of Bhagavatam shlokas is very attractive to the mind, to the heart. Now to memorize shlokas, many people keep asking me, you are quoting shlokas, how do you remember shlokas? How do you memorize shlokas? I have only one answer. We will remember shlokas. There's different techniques you can remember. More than all these techniques of repeated recitation and all that, I would say that we need to fall in love with the shloka. We need to fall in love with the melody of the shloka or the meaning of the shloka, two things. So Bhagavatam shlokas have multiple meters, multiple chandas. Some are small shlokas, like you have this shloka, say, yesterday we were discussing, right? Yasyam Vaisruyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktirutpadyate Pumsaha Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. You say shloka in another also. Yasyam Vaisruyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktirutpadyate Pumsaha Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. Like that, in different meters, means different melodies, you can sing this one shloka, which is written in certain meter. It's very small. There are very few number of syllables in this shloka. Now you see there is another shloka. For example, second shloka you take. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayon moolanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parairishvaraha Sadyo Avarudhyatetra Kritibhi Susrushibhistakshanat. This is also one shloka only. I didn't recite 10 slokas. The previous shloka, it's very short shloka. Now this shloka is very long shloka. Now one line of this shloka is equal to 2.5 lines of the previous shloka. We have 19 syllables. These are different meters. There are some other shlokas, medium shlokas. So like Yat Pada Pankaja Palasa Vilasa Bhaktya Karmashayam Gratitam Grathayanti Santha Tadvanna Riktamatayo Yatayo Piruddha Shroto Ganastamaranam Bhajavasudevam. So this is medium meter. So the number of syllables is very medium size, not so short like the first shloka, not so long like the second shloka. So this has the medium shloka. Like that, Bhagavatam shlokas are of multiple meters. They can be recited in multiple melodies, and they have multiple meanings. Either you fall in love with the melody of the shloka, or the meter of the shloka, or the meaning of the shloka. Something should hit you. Then only we can remember the shloka. Now, some shlokas are there. They are very rhyming. Yesterday we discussed. Tadeva ramyam ruchiram navam navam. Tadeva shashvan manaso mahotsavam. Tadeva shokarnava shoshanam drinam. Yaduttama shloka yasho nugiyate. So Tadeva ramyam ruchiram navam navam. Like that's very rhyming. And the words are coming repeatedly. And it becomes easy to memorize this kind of shlokas. Now, either you fall in with the sound of the shloka or the meaning of the shloka. Now, there are other shlokas that have multiple very beautiful meanings. Now, the other shloka I was reciting, right? Nivritta tarshay rupagiyamana bhavoshada shrotra manobhiramat. The meaning of the shloka is very attractive to the heart. And the shloka that attracts you, the meaning of the shloka is appealing to you, and some other shloka is more appealing, depending on one's own taste. Some people like philosophical verses. Some people like those verses that are describing the pastimes of the Lord. Some people like those verses that are describing the beautiful form of the Lord. There's not much action there. It's only a description of Krishna's beauty. Okay. And some people like those shlokas which are grammatically, means that has so many poetic alliterations and rhyming words and all the tongue twisters. Some people like that kind of shlokas. It depends on your individual taste. All the 18,000 shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam are nectarian. We consider this is an exaggerated statement, but if only one's consciousness is tuned into Krishna, everything sounds nectarian, no doubt about it. So now some shlokas are appealing to some devotees, and some kind of other flavor of shlokas are appealing to some other devotees. So you will be able to memorize a shloka to the degree attracted to its meaning or its meter. Either you fall in love with the sound of the shloka or the meaning. Sometimes some shloka says, for example, there is a beautiful shloka in the 10th canto Bhagavatam that says, Naikatra priya samvasaha suhridam Krishna suhridam chitra karmanam oghena vyuhamananam plavanam srotasvagitha. Means in this shloka, uh, a very important principle that we can see in life is described. For example, there is a flowing river, and you put some two twigs on that river, and they start floating on in this flowing river. Now, how long these two twigs will remain together? They will not remain together for a long time. So with the current of the river, they may get separated in the middle. They may travel together, say for 1 kilometer on the surface of the water, and after some time they may get separated. After that, sometime they may come closer also, they may again get separated completely. So now the relationships that we have with other people in this world are also more or less like this. We may come in contact with some people, and later we may not be able to stay with them for a long time. So naikatra priya samvasaha. So na ekatra. We cannot stay together with our beloved ones. Priya samvasaha. Although they are very dear to you, suhurdam, they are very genuine well-wishers of yourself, but still you cannot stay with them. Or sometimes we may have to stay with those people whom we may not love so much. That's even more austere. So chitra karmanam, the word used there is chitra karmanam. Chitra karma means very unique karma. Everybody has a very unique fruitive baggage, because of which they have to undergo certain reactions and certain struggles in their lives. So that's why one cannot stay with their beloved ones all the time. So this is a very important life principle that is that we can see in our day-to-day lives. So when the meaning is appealing to you, you feel like memorizing the shloka. So that's about in principle falling in love with the shloka, either the meter of the shloka or meaning of the shloka, so that you can memorize it. Once you love the meter or meaning, you tend to repeatedly recite. Then comes the technique or the process. When you repeatedly recite something, you will automatically remember it. Now, Narasimharthi, you may not keep a book in front of you always. Now that every day you are reciting this Narasimharthi, it went into your memory. Samsara Davanalali Dhaloka, we may just remember it in our memory because daily we are attending Mangalarti. So by repeated recitation, we can remember the shlokas. So repeated recitation is a very important key. Now we have to hear the recitation also. Not only we recite repeatedly, and when others recite, that also when it enters into our ear holes, we can remember. All these songs, movie songs like Hollywood, Bollywood, Tollywood, Mollywood, Collywood, whatever songs are there, we remember them earlier, at least before coming to Krishna consciousness or whatever. We remember them because we repeatedly recited them. Now we have a Vaishnava songbook. Earlier we didn't have a Bollywood songbook, but still we remember because we repeatedly heard all those songs. So similarly, if we repeatedly hear the recitation of Bhagavatam shlokas or Bhagavad Gita shlokas, and if we ourselves also make an attempt to recite them on a regular basis, we automatically remember. Because there are some often recited shlokas like Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Because we have heard these shlokas repeatedly, we remember them. And there are some shlokas which are not often repeatedly recited. They are not very popular. We may not remember them. सवेद धातुः पदवीं परस्य दुरन्तवीर्यस्य रथाङ्गपाणेः यो अमायया सन्ततया अनुवृत्या भजेत तत्पाद सरोजगन्धम्. There is a beautiful shloka in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. Now, not many people may be knowing this shloka because not many times they have heard this shloka. But if you read the meaning, if you can relate with that meaning, you will make an endeavor to remember it. You will be inspired to remember it. So, to summarize the whole discussion, I would say, to memorize shlokas, we need to love the shloka. We need to love the shloka either for its meaning or for its meter. And secondly, we have to repeatedly hear the recitation. We have to repeatedly recite it ourselves so that we can remember it. And how do you repeat? Probably you take one line and then repeat it 10 times or 15 times. Then go to second line, repeat it 10, 15 times. Or you recite the whole shloka multiple times. Like that, there are multiple ways. Different people can take it into their memory in different ways. So it's an individual. There are details, and group recitation matters a lot. So if you recite in groups, if you are alone reciting, now if you are stuck somewhere, you may not proceed. But if you are sitting in the midst of 10 people and then as a group, if you are reciting, although you are stuck somewhere, others are proceeding. Now you will be inspired to proceed. Now, for example, second line you are stuck, but they are proceeding to third and fourth line. Although you miss the second line, you continue with third and fourth line. Later you can fill in the blank on your own. But if you are alone doing it, then it may be a little difficult. It may be time taking. In our childhood, when our 8th standard, 8th, 9th, 10th, 3 years, I studied in a school where sloka recitation was mandatory for us. Morning, around 45 minutes, we used to recite all these Bhagavad Gita slokas, Vishnu Sahasranam, Purusha Suktam, Sri Suktam, Mantra Pushpam, Rudram, Namakam, Chamakam, Lalita Sahasranam, all this. It's a daily recitation for us. Then because we recited it in group as children, it went into our memory. So that matters. And at young age, people can remember easily, but that does not mean old people cannot remember. They can also remember. Like that. If only they fall in love with the meaning of the shloka or meter of the shloka. Any questions, Prabhu?
So we have a few questions. So I'll take them. Pundrikaksha Prabhu, what is your question?
Correction, Prabhuji. Prabhuji.
Dandavat.
Prabhuji, in the beginning, we discussed method and mood of
Mood.
studying Srimad Bhagavatam. In that, we said that no fruitive activity, I mean, no selfish desires and purity of mind is required when we are studying Bhagavatam. But there is one verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday, I think you were reciting that Akama Sarva Kamova Moksha Kama Vidadradhi. Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Ejante Purusham Param. So there,
correct.
Even though we have fruitive desires or no desire or liberation, still we have to pray the Lord, Supreme Lord.
Correct.
So how can we understand this? Is it a contradiction?
Simple, no contradiction at all. Basically, ideal is not to have any material motives behind our performance of bhakti. But even if we have material motives also, Krishna is kind enough to accommodate us. That does not mean we maintain material motives. It's not an encouragement for us to maintain material motives. But even if we have, Krishna is kind enough. If we have material motives and still Krishna is kind enough to accommodate us, what if we don't have material motives? We should think in those lines. That's why Sukadeva Goswami, after describing Ajamil episode, where he described how Ajamil was delivered, although he was just, Ajamil's story, right? Ajamil led a sinful life with that prostitute, but at the end of his life, on his deathbed, he spoke the name of Narayana, and Vishnudutas came and protected him from the Yamadutas. So Ajamil had a sinful life, but still the Lord protected him. What will happen if we do not commit any sins and chant Hare Krishna? Second, Ajamil was indicating his son Narayana, not Lord Narayana. What will happen if we indicate the Lord directly? Third, Ajamil chanted the name Narayana without faith. What will happen if we chant with faith? Ajamil chanted at the time of death. What will happen if we chant throughout the lifetime? So that is the message that we need to take. So although people with material desires are also admitted in the whole path of Bhakti Yoga, eventually the Lord will purify them of material desires. But that maintaining material desires is not a recommendation. For example, Krishna gave liberation to demons like Putana, Aghasur, Bakasur, Vyamasur, Vatsasur, and many other demons in Vrindavan. And he liberated even Kamsa, Chanura, Mushtika, Shala, Toshala, Kuta, then Kuvalaya Pida, and many Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, all these people. Although Krishna gave liberation to all of them, Krishna considered that these people were absorbed in remembrance of Krishna even with the negative attitude. Some people were absorbed in Krishna with envy, some people had anger, some people had hatred, some people had fear. Kamsa had fear. Some people had lust. And now Surpanakha had lust towards Ram. And in her next life, she became Kubja, and then she attained Krishna. So like that, different people come with even negative emotions also towards Krishna, but Krishna is kind enough to accommodate them. That does not mean these negative emotions are recommendations for bhakti. They are not mentioned as recommendations. Okay, you can worship Krishna by having deep hatred towards him, deep envy towards him. That's never mentioned in scriptures. We should always worship Krishna with love and affection only. So that's why similarly we should also try to study Srimad Bhagavatam without any material motivations, without any expectations of becoming scholar or getting some money, getting some name, fame, prestige, etc. We should just purely derive some inspiration to render service to Krishna and increase our knowledge and attachment towards Krishna by studying Bhagavatam. That's the ideal thing. But even if somebody has some negative intentions, somehow Bhagavatam will purify us. That which is pure by nature and that which is purified by force are different, isn't it? Slightly, at least.
Yes,
Something
yes,
is purified by force, ultimately it will also become pure. But Krishna has to put some endeavor to purify this fellow. But if you already go to Krishna with pure intentions, Krishna need not have that job of purifying us, so he will be happy. That's the thing. There's no contradiction there. Does it make sense, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Correction.
Hare Krishna. Gauranga Darshan Prabhuji, I have received one question on the chat here. How to understand the meter and melody? Can we use any melody in any shloka, or how do we understand correct melody or meter?
So meter is basically chandas, the way the shloka is written. Melody is tune, the way it is recited. So meter is, I recited multiple shlokas, some short shlokas, some medium shlokas, some long shlokas. That is the meter, that is chandas. I'm not so good at Sanskrit grammar, but chandas is like the way in which syllables are placed. Dirgha, hrasva, like the, now a shloka is written with certain syllables arrayed in a certain manner. Some are like dirgha means long syllables, some are short syllables. Nivritta tarshair. Ni is a simple syllable. Vru is like a combination of two sounds. So when one sound, one consonant is combined with a vowel, that's like a basic sound. But when in one sound you find two consonants, vru, there is v kara and then r kara. Then that is combined with u. So nivritta tarshair, ta, the ta is double there. So like that, that's meter has its technicalities, but melody means the tune in which you recite. For example, a shloka nivritta tarshair upagevana bhavashada srota manobhrana, like that you read the poetry shloka as if you are reading prose. That's one. Nivritta tarshair upagiyamana bhavaushadhat shrotra manobhiramat, means you have recited it in a tune. So this is melody. The previous one is meter. Meter is the way shloka is written, and melody is the way it is sung, like that. That's the difference. And multiple meters are there, and for each meter, multiple melodies are there. It's you take whichever you like, whichever is easy for you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So one more question we have here from Bharadwaj Rishi Prabhu or Anuttara Mataji, one of the two.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, you told that Bhagavatam is a ripened fruit, no Prabhuji? We can eat anywhere the ripened fruit, it will be sweet only, no? Why we have to start from Canto 1? Because ripened fruit, if you eat anywhere, it will be sweet only.
Very nice question. But Prabhupada writes, one of the qualifications to study Bhagavatam is go from first canto to last canto. Now this is one example. Bhagavatam is compared to ripened fruit. This is one way of comparing Bhagavatam. But Bhagavatam is compared to Krishna's beautiful form also, lotus feet to lotus face, and Prabhupada has recommended. But basically reading Bhagavatam from first canto to 12th canto has its logic, because in the initial 9 cantos, the greatness of Krishna is described. We see Krishna's devotees, Krishna's incarnations. For example, the first canto of Bhagavatam introduces us to the main characters of Bhagavatam along with their backstories. First canto of Bhagavatam presents the basic philosophical concepts. In the first 3 chapters, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. That is established in the first 3 chapters. In the next 3 chapters, history of Bhagavatam, why Vasudev compiled Bhagavatam is established. Then in the later chapters, under what circumstances Sukadeva Goswami spoke Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, what was the backstory of Parikshit Maharaj, that is described. And Kunti's prayers, Bhishma's prayers, they are all described, that are describing the glory of the Lord. And later, Krishna's Purushavasaras, how the universe is created, that is described. And Chatishloki Bhagavatam, like that, Bhagavatam, now in the first 2 cantos, the basic philosophical concepts are mentioned and characters are introduced, and also the greatness of Krishna is described without allowing us to go deep into the esoteric leelas of the Lord. Now, if we directly enter the 10th canto, say Rasa Panchadhyaya or Vasarharan Leela or even Damodar Leela, Mridabhakshan Leela, we may consider that Krishna is an ordinary child, because we see children doing some mischief and mothers are chastising the children, disciplining the children. So same thing Mother Yashoda is doing with Krishna. But if we have the background of studying first 9 cantos, in which we understand Krishna's greatness, who is he, how he is creating the world, how he is manifesting the universe, etc., etc., then we understand Krishna's greatness and we don't consider Krishna's Damodar Leela as ordinary. Then we will be inspired to offer lamb to Damodar in Kartik month with reverence and devotion, not considering the deity of Yashoda Damodar to be ordinary affair between mother and child. So that's one understanding where you are equipped with the knowledge of Krishna's greatness before you come to understanding Krishna's sweetness. But one thing is there, Bhagavatam is sweet wherever we taste, and there are some sections of Bhagavatam that are specifically appealing to us. For example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would request devotees, to Gadadhar Pandit in specific, to recite Dhruva Maharaj's story and Prahlad Maharaj's story repeatedly. So Mahaprabhu had his favorite pastimes. Similarly, different devotees have different favorite pastimes. So some people like Kunti Maharani's prayers a lot. Some people like Bhishma Stuti a lot. Some people like Chitraketu's episode a lot. Some people like Dhruva's episode. Some people like Krishna's 10th canto pastimes a lot. Some people like Rukmini Devi pastime more. Some people like Sudama pastime. Some people like very philosophical discussions like Kapil Dev's teachings, Uddhava Gita, then Bhikshu Gita, Aila Gita, like that. There are so many philosophical sections that are describing detachment philosophy. So some people like that, you can always delve deep on it. At least once, if you go chronologically, then you can always focus on your favorite pastimes. And sometimes, occasionally also we can read. For example, Ramanavami comes, you go to 9th canto and read. Then Vaman Dev's appearance day will come, then you go to 8th canto and read. Then Varahadev's appearance will come, Varaha Dvadashi, then we can read 3rd canto, Varahadev section. Like that, occasionally also we can do selective reading and we can read our favorite pastimes also. But as far as our personal study is concerned, if we are equipped with the knowledge of Krishna's greatness, then we can appreciate Krishna's sweetness nicely. Thus, reading systematically is emphasized. Although everything is sweet. Does it make sense?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
His Grace Gauranga Darshan Prabhuji ki
Krishna Prabhu.